You're listening to Release Your Resistance with Bex Beltran, episode 88. Welcome to Release Your Resistance. This is Bex. The only reason why any of us don't have what we want in life is because of our own resistance. Right now, I'm learning how to recognize and release my resistance, and this podcast tells you how you can release your resistance so that you can live the exact life that you want. Let's get started. Thank you to everyone who replied or commented or gave feedback about last week's episode, which was the introduction for the topic here in September, all about how to get unstuck. Today, I want to talk about the first tool that I mentioned last week. It's for you to get awareness around your thinking. I have 3 different suggestions to share with you about how you can get awareness around your thinking. The whole point of getting awareness around your thinking is for you to notice your thoughts and identify them as such. Some people may not be doing this work yet. Some people might not be familiar with this overall strategy of observing thoughts, or in other words, creating distance and space between what you are thinking and who you are. I don't think we learn this strategy innately. I think in general, we just go through our lives hearing or listening to our thoughts and trusting them and believing them and acting on them without question, without distance, and without separation. And then we get confused about what is going on with us because we're not really sure which part of our brain is offering us a thought. By noticing your thoughts and identifying that, hey, this is a thought, you get that distance. You have that objectivity. You can remove the threat that your brain might be offering you if the thought is coming from the threat center of your brain instead of from the logical, rational part of your brain. Getting awareness around your thinking is the first tool of the 3 tools that I shared last week about how to get unstuck. At this point, while using this first tool, I am not suggesting that you, quote unquote, do anything yet. I am not asking you to make any changes or make any decisions at this point. Really, all I'm suggesting that you do at this point is just to get awareness. Even just getting awareness can actually result in a change. It can actually give you a feeling of freedom or liberation or relief. But if it doesn't, that's okay. Because again, this is just the very first tool. I have 3 suggestions of how you can get awareness around your thinking. You might be able to guess what they are. I talk about 2 of them frequently. If you have been listening to this podcast for a while, or if you have coached with me or spent any time with me or followed me on social, you have heard or seen me talking about these. The 3 suggestions are coaching, journaling, and labeling. Were you surprised by that 3rd one? Let's get deeper into each one of these 3 suggestions. The first thing that I want to suggest as a way for you to get awareness around your thinking is to work with a coach. One of the benefits of working with a coach is that you have that awareness time scheduled. That means that you will actually spend the time thinking about your thoughts and talking about your thoughts, because sometimes if we don't schedule things, we don't do them. Instead of delaying or putting off and procrastinating or finding some other way to distract yourself from thinking about your thinking, which might be uncomfortable and unfamiliar, if you schedule some time with a coach, you get the benefit of another person. And the benefit is having that other person whose only job is to show you your thinking. You get the accountability factor. You decide for yourself that this 45 minutes or hour is a time that I am going to spend thinking and talking about my thoughts. That is a great benefit. Just the fact that you have dedicated time to get that awareness is a benefit. But wait, it gets even better because the coach is able to ask you questions while remaining neutral. I believe in self-coaching. I do self-coaching with myself frequently throughout the day, every day. It's definitely a part of my current lifestyle and my routine. Yet, I also continue to see the benefit of coaching with a second person. Why not just exclusively self-coach? Because yes, I am able to ask myself questions, but I am not always able to remain completely neutral when I am coaching myself. I recently had an example of this benefit with a coaching client. She had thoughts about a situation that were creating a lot of stress and overwhelm for her. She came to the coaching session and she started to describe what was going on. And the more she described it, the more worked up she got. She was really getting into the story that she was explaining to me, and which in her mind was all very true and very relevant and very urgent. And I am not in her brain. I am not in her situation. So I heard the story and there was no threat to me. I really could see it with an outsider's perspective. I really could see that it didn't have to be a big deal at all. So I was able to ask her questions as if it wasn't a big deal. I was able to ask her questions as if this was a completely neutral situation. And just by giving her that response, instead of getting super excited and threatened and overwhelmed along with her, just by asking her questions, believing that this was a solvable and also maybe it was just as fine as it was situation, gave her a more open perspective. So, hearing this suggestion and this example, would you consider coaching as a way to get awareness around your thinking? If you don't want to get coaching, maybe coaching is not an option for you at this point. If you are interested in another suggestion besides coaching, of course, I have another suggestion for you. It's another one of my favorite topics. It's journaling. Just like in coaching or in self-coaching, as I was describing, journaling gives you the option and the space to ask yourself questions. It gives you that distance. It gives you objectivity. The benefit of journaling frequently or daily is that you have your thoughts written down in the same location, even if you do it digitally on a Word document or in a notes app on your phone. So having your thoughts spelled out in front of you means that you have the option to notice patterns. This has happened to me frequently when I journal. When I notice myself writing something and I almost get a little bored of myself, like, really, Bex, this again? I'm still thinking about this, or I'm still dealing with this. Just that act of having to write it down as I journal is a way to illuminate something that I have been thinking about or poring over or spinning on for a while. I can notice repetition. I can notice things that I can't seem to let go of and areas where I am stuck. And then I can question why I'm not letting go. The opposite also happens sometimes. Maybe I don't see the pattern at all. It is possible that what I am writing about doesn't even feel repetitive to me in any way. And so it is very interesting sometimes when I flip back to a week ago or a month ago and I see almost verbatim some of the same thoughts that I wrote about today. Even though I didn't recognize them, when I reread what I wrote before, my logical brain is able to see, okay, this is me continuing to think these things, and I don't necessarily need to think them. Hearing the suggestion of journaling, would you consider writing as a way to get awareness around your thinking? If so, or if not, I still have a third suggestion for you when it comes to getting awareness around your thinking. I am calling it labeling. When I think of a label, I think of a sticker that you print out and you put it on something. You are identifying something with that sticker. So labeling a thought is a way to get awareness around it. You can call it what it is. You can identify it. This third suggestion of labeling does not require a second person. It does not require a journal or a notebook or a digital workspace. You really can do this mentally mid-think. Is that a word? I don't think so. As you are thinking a thought, you can also notice it, get awareness around it, and label it. A very basic way to do this is to think to yourself, I am thinking. If you catch yourself telling yourself, I don't have time, instead of just saying, I don't have time, you could add the label, I am thinking I don't have time. Ooh, do you notice the difference there? Using the label creates that distance and objectivity that I was mentioning earlier. Labeling something as a thought lets you see it as a thought instead of mindlessly believing it is the actual 100% irrefutable truth that we might have just assumed prior to getting awareness around our thoughts. I'll give you an option that goes along with labeling that might help you to get some practice doing this because it is a practice. We don't necessarily insert labels as we are thinking. So one way that you could practice labeling is to practice on other people. This is something that you can do internally, silently to yourself about other people. The benefit of practicing on other people is that you do have that distance, that neutrality that I mentioned when I was telling you about the coaching example. So I am not suggesting that you practice by coaching other people, especially if they haven't asked you to, but I am suggesting that when you think about what other people are thinking, you have that same neutrality. As an example, imagine that you are in a grocery store and you see someone, a stranger, behaving in a way that stands out a little bit. Maybe they are very agitated and making a big deal and making a lot of noise. Or maybe they're not being loud at all. Maybe they're being very quiet and timid. So just imagine that you notice their behavior. You pay attention to how they are acting. The way that you could practice labeling is to notice what they say, what they do, and you internally in your mind imagine what they might be thinking. That's interesting, right? If you notice someone being very timid, you could think to yourself, I wonder what that person is thinking to make them behave that way. You might assume they are thinking the thought, I don't belong here, or I don't know what I'm doing. Or they might be thinking the thought, I'm worried that people are judging me. See how you noticed all the possible thoughts? See how you have distance and objectivity from the other person and were able to guess what they might be thinking without being sure of the truth? By practicing on other people where the stakes are very, very low, you can get your mind into the routine or the habit of identifying thinking, and then you might be able to label your own thoughts. When you notice, oh, here I am getting worked up, I'm getting very agitated, I'm getting very excited, you can wonder, why am I doing this? What am I thinking? Aha! And now you can label, oh, I have the thought that something is unfair, or I am thinking that something might be taken away from me. That thought, that thinking is creating the feeling of agitation and leading to agitated actions. Let's do an example together. Here it is. Someone wants to quit something. Imagine a fictional person, and let's say that she wants to quit her job, but she feels stuck. She wants to quit, but she keeps looping around on if she should. But then she doesn't want to, but she really does. So she thinks about it all the time, and she still doesn't do anything. Classic stuck, right? If this example doesn't apply to you, just substitute the idea of quitting with something else that you might be stuck on. So how could we use the tool of getting awareness around thinking, using the suggestions that I gave, coaching, journaling, and labeling, for someone who wants to quit her job, or whatever your example is? This person wants to quit her job, but she feels stuck and she feels unable to quit, even though that is what she wants to do. So if she decides to have a coaching session, she might describe to her coach the reason why she wants to quit the job. And then she might also share all of the reasons why she feels like she can't, or she shouldn't, or not at this time, or not yet, or she's unable to quit. And the coach is completely neutral if this person quits her job or stays at the job. The coach is able to ask further follow-up questions and point things out to the client. If one of the reasons that the client gives for not quitting the job is thinking the thought that she won't make as much money anywhere else, the coach can ask follow-up questions like, how do you know how much money can be made in other places? What research have you done about salaries? How does that research apply to you in your current situation and your possible future situation? How much money do you want to make? Is money the deciding factor for where you work? All of these questions may sound so basic and so obvious, but it is possible that the client has not considered them thoughtfully and neutrally. There are a lot of different directions that coaching conversation could go. And let's say that our fictional friend who's feeling stuck about quitting her job decides to journal about it. She could write down all her thoughts about quitting the job, why she wants to quit the job, why she can't quit the job, what's holding her back from quitting the job, what she's afraid of when she thinks about quitting the job, what she thinks will definitely happen if she quits. By writing all these thoughts down, she has them in front of her in black and white. By being honest with herself when she's writing in her journal, maybe she will notice that one of the reasons that she can't quit the job is because she thinks that people will be upset if she quits. Or maybe she notices that she is afraid that her coworkers, who she really likes, will have to do more work if she ends up quitting. Okay, now she has awareness. She can label those two sentences as thoughts. She can say, oh, I am thinking that people will be upset. I have the thought that my departure will create more work for other people. And can I point out, we haven't asked for any changes yet. We haven't made any decisions at this point. All we are doing with this one tool is we are just getting awareness around thinking. That's all we're doing right now. But even with just that awareness, can you see how our fictional friend who's thinking of quitting her job but feels stuck, how now she can recognize why she is stuck? She doesn't want people to be upset or have more work to do. And she is thinking that will 100% for sure happen if she quits. And maybe it will happen. Who knows? Can you also see how much more relief she would be experiencing, even if she still doesn't know what to do or when she's going to do it, just with the awareness, oh, this is not a threat. She could realize, I am not completely sure that people will have more work to do or that people will be upset if I quit. She might recognize that she doesn't know for sure that she can't make the same amount or more money in a different job. Just through coaching, journaling, and labeling, she can have awareness, and that awareness can create relief for her, even if she hasn't made a choice or decided to take action or decided to change her mind. But at least with the awareness, She has more information about making an intentional decision. And this is for a later tool that we will talk about in a few weeks, but she might decide to think, even if it means people will be disappointed, I would still rather quit this job than continue to work here. That's good to know. Since this was a generic example, I hope you inserted an area that is more relevant to you to see how you could use coaching or journaling and labeling in order to get awareness around your thinking. And I also want to spend a little time today responding to some of the feedback that I got from last week's episode when I introduced the idea of getting unstuck. I got one comment that the person who listened to the episode said that she doesn't use the word stuck when she thinks about herself. But as she was listening to the episode, she did recognize, oh, I definitely am feeling stuck right now. I'm definitely not moving in the direction that I want to move in, and I feel like I can't. But she let me know that she would have never used that specific vocabulary to describe herself. She described it more as feeling apathy. So I can totally see that and I can relate to that. And maybe you can too. So have you ever wanted to do or get or try something but had resistance to it or felt stuck so much so that you didn't try anything and maybe even talked yourself out of it and decided not to want it after all? Very apathetic, right? Staying stuck does take less effort than getting unstuck. So I can see how apathy would be attractive to our energy-conserving amygdalas. And I love this comment because it opened my thinking a little further, and I was able now to share it with you this week in case, like the other listener, you don't really identify with the stuck description. What other differences or similarities have you noticed as you listened last week and now again this week? What questions do you have about getting awareness around thinking? Next week, we will be talking about checking your thoughts against results. So what questions does that topic bring up for you? I cannot wait to hear all about it and incorporate your feedback into next week's episode. And one last thing before we go, I love getting comments, feedback, and reviews. All of it inspires me and encourages me. Even constructive criticism gives me something to think about and consider about where I can learn and grow. So keep it coming. And thank you. And this week I wanted to share a comment that I got in response to last week's episode. I have really been enjoying the podcast lately and hearing all of the guests. As I was listening to last week's episode, I was lost in thinking, this is exactly about me. She is talking directly to me. Well, thank you so much. Every podcaster's goal is to connect deeply with listeners. So, of course, I was overjoyed when I got that comment. And one more review, just in case it inspires you to leave a review somewhere. I love starting my Friday with this podcast, a real motivator. I love Bex's positive perspective and amazing insight. Thanks, Bex. Keep it up. I will keep it up. Thank you so much for the comments, reviews, and encouragement. You can leave a comment on the show notes for this episode at bexb.org/awareness. Thank you so much for listening today, and I will talk with you next week. This has been Release Your Resistance. Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Also, think about someone who you know who would love this episode and share it with them. There should be a share button on your app if you're listening to this on your phone. If you'd like to continue this conversation one-on-one or in real time, come visit me on my site at bexb.org to see how we can work together.